Welcome! My series on Hungarian Second Army is almost complete. It's time to talk about its defeat and chaotic retreat. In this episode, I will look at the Soviet counteroffensive that took place in January 1943 against this Hungarian army and the remnants of Italian Eighth Army. As a result of this offensive, the front was pushed westwards, although most Axis units were able to retreat. For Hungarian Second Army, the Christmas period passed quietly. No major clashes took place. Some Jewish laborers were even used as armed guards, while the soldiers tried to relax and think of home. At the same time, it was becoming obvious that significant Soviet forces were being amassed opposite the Hungarian light divisions at the Don, and the demise of Italian Eighth Army in December made it more likely that the Hungarians were next. Unfortunately, Axis reconnaissance could not detect such forces even in early January, but in reality, Soviet 40th Army, 3rd Tank Army, and 18th Rifle Corps were getting ready for the offensive, carefully amassing their equipment and men under cover of darkness, avoiding detection. Underwater bridges were built, vehicles were camouflaged, men were hidden in underground bunkers, but Soviet deserters confirmed that a major attack was being prepared. Hungarian units clearly heard movement at night. At some places, they even saw the vehicles as they approached the front on the opposite side, especially around the bridgeheads at Uriv and Shchuchye. As a precaution, their light divisions kept only 5 battalions in the first line, the 6th was kept in reserve, but they lacked medium anti-tank guns and armor support, as their only reserve, 1st Field Armored Division, was withdrawn to the south to Kamienka, where it was put under General Hans Kramer, along with 2 German infantry divisions. In most units, frostbite and hunger led to many casualties even without fighting. Some men weighed 50 kilograms, they were close to starvation, and at many locations their winter clothing was not distributed due to a lack of transportation. Ammunition was also limited. The artillery was allowed 2 shots per day, while most supplies were heading towards Stalingrad to feed the encircled troops and the German relief force. On the 12th of January, the counterattack commenced from the Uriv bridgehead. Their main goal was the complete destruction of Hungarian and Italian forces in the sector, with 3 main thrusts, encircling most Axis units, splitting them into 2, and finishing them off within a few days. At Uriv, 7th Light Division was hit hard. Within a few hours, its positions were penetrated. Their regiments had to retreat a few kilometers, but the line still held. 4 other infantry regiments had to send 1 battalion each to the area, but they could only arrive by the evening, and their counterattack the next day, supported by German 700th Panzer Unit, could not push back the Soviet tanks. These units were virtually wiped out in the fighting. 3rd Corps was separated from the rest of the army. The gap was now 10 km wide and 12 km deep. On the 14th of January, the main offensive started. Soviet 4th Tank Corps advanced westwards along the Potudan River, then turned south to reach Alexeyevka. 1 Hungarian regiment at Uriv was cut off, so it crossed the Don to the Soviet side and then marched north to reach 3rd Corps. Soviet 18th Rifle Corps also launched its attack from the Shchuchye bridgehead. It quickly overwhelmed 12th Light Division and advanced 8 kilometers. At several places, Hungarian units repelled 8-9 attacks before running out of ammunition, at which point they had to abandon their lines. Once they were pushed onto the snow-covered fields, they had only one option: retreat as fast as possible, leaving everything behind, since nobody could pull heavy guns by hand. Things were not better down south, where Soviet 3rd Tank Army attacked Italian and German units in their area, although they had to send in their second wave to break the defenders. Temperatures plunged to minus 45 degrees Celsius, many weapons jammed, tanks could not be started, the airplanes at Ilovskoye could not take off to support Axis ground units. The situation was further complicated by the arrival of the first replacement units. These were stationed 100 kilometers behind the front in December, then started moving forward in early January. When the Soviet attack commenced, these units, most of which were not armed, panicked and retreated, so their German allies believed that Hungarians threw away their weapons and fled the battlefield. At the Potudan, a newly arrived infantry unit counterattacked. Each soldier was equipped only with 2 hand grenades, but they nonetheless charged the Soviet tanks. You can imagine the end result. The only capable reserve, Kramer Corps, was ordered to stand down. It started moving only on the 14th, when it was too late to save 12th Light Division at Szczucie. The next day, the northern gap widened to 60 kilometers. Soviet forces were 10 kilometers away from Ostrogozhsk, a major supply center, and 30 kilometers from Alexeyevka, Second Army's HQ. By that time, 7th and 12th Light Divisions were destroyed. 6th and 9th, along with remnants of 20th Light Division, were separated from the army up north, while 10th and 13th were being encircled at Ostrogozhsk in the center, and the 19th and 23rd Light Divisions held out in the south, still facing the Don, but their position was untenable. To their south, 3rd Tank Army continued to advance. Most Italian and German units were retreating, using the only available road. Kramer Corps finally counterattacked to save the encircled units at Rostogozhsk, but their flanks were hit hard, and they had to return to their starting point. 1st Field Armored Division was ordered to retreat westwards, but in the chaos, it got mixed up with Italian and German units and ceased to be a single unit. The division fell apart. To the south, 7th Corps and its 2 remaining divisions were finally ordered to retreat. After 2 days of hesitation, Lieutenant General Jani acted without the approval of his superiors, although Hitler's direct order banning all retreat was still in effect. By the 18th of January, Ostrogozhsk was surrounded. Ilovskoye was reached by the Soviet thrust, but the Hungarian Air Force personnel destroyed all remaining planes and broke out of the encirclement, while a mixed group of 1st Field Armored Division was able to push the Soviets out of Alexeyevka and cover the retreat of the German and Hungarian infantry and the Italian Alpini units, saving the remnants of 2 armies. The next day, the gap was 300 kilometers wide. Only a few strongpoints were still in Axis hands, while most units retreated towards the Oskol River. The Soviets took 52,000 prisoners and destroyed 170 tanks, 1,700 guns, and 6,000 motor vehicles. The 1 German and 2 Hungarian divisions, with 8,000 combat troops and thousands of wounded, broke out of Ostrogozhsk and reached Alexeyevka a day later, suffering heavy losses. Remnants of the Alpini also broke out and marched west, while 2,000 men of 19th Light Division were captured by the Soviets and ordered to move eastwards. Instead, they also marched west and joined the Italians. Retreat to the Oskol Valley continued, while 1st Field Armored Division and German 26th Infantry Division still held Alexeyevka and Budyeni, repelling Soviet attacks that could not eliminate the pocket of retreating Axis units. On the 22nd of January, Soviet cavalry cut the road to Novi Oskol, but after fierce fighting, they were thrown back and the retreat continued. Remnants of 4th and 7th Corps, around 17,000 men, were being amassed in the Oskol Valley. The decision was then made to use those units that were still capable of fighting, while 2nd Army's HQ was released of its command function. During the following week, all rearguard units reached Novi Oskol, breaking away from the advancing Soviet units, whose focus now shifted to German 2nd Army at Voronezh. Smaller German and Hungarian groups defended Stary Oskol and Novi Oskol until the 29th of January. Then all remaining Hungarian forces retreated to Belgorod. They were joined by another 7,000 who had followed the retreating Italians. Unfortunately, 3rd Corps, that was now subordinated to a German Second Army, suffered even heavier losses as it had to cover the German retreat. Most of their troops, along with Corps Commander Lieutenant General Marcel Stomm, were forced by the Germans to spend the nights outside in the freezing cold. After he was ordered to break out in a direction that was held by strong Soviet formations, Stomm officially disbanded his corps and wished good luck to his troops, some of which, around 7,000, were able to retreat in smaller groups, while thousands more froze to death or surrendered. Stomm was also captured by the Soviets, but he lost both his legs due to frostbite. By the end of the month, only remnants of the Free Army Corps were in safety behind the Axis line. I will talk more about the retreat, casualty rates, and the return to Hungary in the next episode. Thank you for watching. See you next time.